Hi, welcome to Africa in Perspective. My name is Nelda, and every video is about Africa from Mondays to Friday. Today, we're going to be talking about a death that happened in Kenya. It was a political activist. His name was Albert Ojwang, and he passed away while in police custody. So, the reason I'm talking about this case in particular is because there has been an ongoing trend of what is known as extrajudicial killings. So, what that means is when somebody is killed by the government or a law enforcement authority without any court order, without any trial, it's just the government or law enforcement authority decides that it's time for you to die. And there has been an ongoing trend that is rising up, particularly in East Africa. So we're going to cover Ojwang's case, and then we're going to look at the wider implications that this has for the whole continent. So feel free to like the video, to comment, to subscribe, and to share. Albert Omondi Ojwang was a 31-year-old high school teacher, but no, he wasn't just a teacher. He was also a father. He was also a husband. He was also a son. He was cared for by a lot of people. And with that, he also cared for his community, and he was also a political activist. He got himself in quote-unquote trouble because he exposed somebody known as Eliud Lagat, who was the Deputy Inspector General in Homa Bay. And this person was involved in allegedly some sort of bribery case that was going on, and Ojwang decided to expose him in a series of expos. So because of that, Eliud Lagat, who was the Deputy Inspector General, was offended by that and decided to issue an arrest. And so Ojwang was arrested at his home, which is roughly 350 kilometers away from Nairobi, which is the capital city of Kenya. So that being said, what makes this case a little bit strange is that after Ojwang was arrested in his home in Homa Bay, he was then transported all the way to Nairobi. So 350 kilometers sent all the way to the Nairobi Central Police Station. And he was taken by what are called plainclothes detectives, and they informed his father, Meshach Ojwang, that he was being arrested for insulting their boss, so Eliud Lagat. And he was first taken to a local police station in Homa Bay and then transported around. And there were no formal charges that were filed against him. There was no evidence that was brought before him. There was no anything official really to apprehend him in the first place. But so the events of June 6th were all just purely the arrest. But then on June 7th, there was a conversation that he had with his wife, and that was allegedly the last time that he spoke to his wife. And then he was expected to also be in conversation with his father on June 8th, but unfortunately, he passed away because after June 7th, he had the final call with his wife, final call with his dad, and that was virtually it. So by Sunday, June 8th, on the morning, Ojwang was found dead in his cell at the Central Police Station in Nairobi. And initially, the police were trying to be funny, and they said that this was self-induced injuries. So he banged his head on a wall while he was trying to move around, and it just didn't make sense because looking at his body, and later on, an independent autopsy was conducted as well, and they were found to be so many things. I'm just going to read them out for you here. So in the post-mortem that was conducted by a team of 5 different pathologists, they found that there was severe head injuries that you can't just cause on yourself. Like even if you're going to bang your head on something, you're going to be cautious on the pain that you're inflicting on yourself. There was also neck compression. There was multiple soft tissue injuries across his body. There was swelling. There was bruises on his head, nose, ears, shoulders, hands, virtually everything. And these injuries were clearly not self-inflicted. And so the idea of it being put forward as I don't know, accident or suicide, that was just out of the picture altogether. And so an organization known as the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, or IPOA, confirmed that there was CCTV footage at the station that they could have checked, but that CCTV footage had been tampered with. So you have, on one hand, they came out and said, oh, we had this person in custody and he passed away because of a self-inflicted injury. But then on the other hand, you also have an independent authority that's like, okay, sure, we just want to investigate and have a look to see how he caused this self-inflicted injury on himself. And then they found out that the CCTV footage is tampered with. There isn't like a clear CCTV footage that they can use to be able to verify the claims that the police station that was making. So that said, this ended up sparking a lot of outrage in Kenya, particularly in Nairobi. There's a lot of youth going out to protest because the issue is, and this is bringing this particular case into the wider context, this is not the first time that somebody has died in police custody in Kenya. Now, you could argue in every country there has been somebody who has died in police custody, and in some cases it's surely something that is quote unquote legit. So somebody actually died because, I don't know, they were going through something or their body just gave up. But in most cases, when somebody dies in police custody, it's because the police are doing something they're not supposed to be doing. So they're either beating this person up, and one of the allegations, I'm not saying this is one of the allegations being made here, is that they were potentially trying to get out information out of Ojwang. So they were potentially beating him up so that he can give up other activists who are working on the bribery that had to do with Eliud Lagat. So this is, it's sad in many ways, but I think what is even more sad is that this keeps happening. It keeps happening. And it's not just in Kenya. It keeps happening. It's happening in Tanzania as well. And I'm a Tanzanian, and I'm even just saying this terrifies me because I'm like, oh my God, the Tanzanian government could come for me. But it's just, there's kidnappings of people. There's any sort of freedom of speech. Wow, speech, that's a new word. But any sort of, when somebody's trying to express themselves, somebody's trying to come up and speak against anything that involves the government or somebody in power, the consequences that they face are pretty intense, and that scares other people from coming forward, which is why I'm applauding everybody in Kenya who's going to protest, everybody who's out there on the roads and saying we are going to talk. I saw this video of a TikTok lady. She was being interviewed and she said, I don't know, I didn't know Albert Ojwang in person. I'm not even from the same region as him, but I'm here to speak for him because he's not able to speak for himself. And life is very precious, guys. I said this in the video that I did about the high suicide rates in Africa, and I'll link it here as well. But life is so precious, and for somebody, just because you have a title, like, I don't know, deputy inspector at a police station, that doesn't give you the right to go after somebody's life. Even if you're the president of the country, even if you're the president, even if you're even if you, I want to say even if you're God, but God technically has the right because He gave us life. But nobody has the right to take somebody else's life, especially if it is somebody who's just trying to do what is best for society. So we're going to have a look at what other countries in Africa are facing, because I wanted to have a look and see, is this something that is going on in Kenya? So in Kenya alone, there was roughly 160 cases of extrajudicial killings just in 2024. So last year, roughly 160 people died with that while in police custody, because police officers just decided, yeah, you're gonna die today, that's it. So that is in Kenya, but also in Nigeria. The Human Rights Watch reported 200 extrajudicial killings by security forces in 2020. This had a lot to do with the End SARS movement as well. A lot of people died during that because usually during protests, police officers use their guns. Even if they use rubber bullets, they are meant to harm you. In Kenya, for example, when they were trying to end the finance bill that was being proposed in 2024, police officers were hosing people down. They were hosing people down. Can you imagine? Like, you're meant to be protecting society, and now people from the society are coming forward and saying, we don't feel protected, we feel threatened, and you're hosing them down. Is a joke. It's an actual joke. So in Nigeria, 200 deaths reported just in 2020. In South Africa, there was 144 deaths of people while in custody, or during arrest, and this was in 2021-2022 reporting year. In Uganda, Amnesty International reports 54 deaths during the 2020 election-related protests. And in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum documented 23 extrajudicial killings by state security in 2020. In the DRC, of course, the UN reported 1,300 civilian deaths by security forces and armed groups in 2022. So, I think this is a very clear trend. There's a very clear trend, and unfortunately, the eastern part of Africa is very notorious. So just like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, DRC, that little area, that little corner, I think they're used to using just force with everything. And so that nicely brings me into the third part of this video, which is just talking about the implications that extrajudicial killings have, or cases like Albert Ojwang's case have. And the first one is, people are starting to lose trust in democracy. Democracy as a concept, I mean, you could argue democracy is the best form of governance that we have, even though it has its flaws. So sure, it has its flaws. However, this acts of extrajudicial killings, this acts of targeting people who are trying to speak up for society, they're suppressing people's faith in democracy. So we are trying to be like, okay, so we are in quote unquote democratic countries, but if I express myself freely, I don't have the trust to be like, nothing is going to happen to me. I don't have that. So we're not only people not only losing trust in democratic societies or democratic countries as a concept, but we're also being suppressed. Our freedom of speech is being taken away from us because right now, even as I'm recording this, I did not want to record this video because I was like, okay, there's no way for me to address what is happening in Kenya without me even hinting at what is already happening in Tanzania. And even the idea of talking about Tanzania scares me because there's a lot of kidnappings going on in my home country. The head of the opposition party is in police custody. He's being accused of treason, and I'm just like, this is clear political persecution. The same thing happened to Albert Ojwang. That was clear political persecution. They were persecuting him because he spoke up against something that was going wrong in the political space. And my goodness, there is no way that change is going to happen in our communities if we're fighting the very people that are trying to speak up for the benefit of the society. Like Albert Ojwang was a high school teacher. He wasn't getting paid very well for being a high school teacher. I don't know of any schools in African countries that pay high school teachers well, unless they're international schools. So you could assume that he wasn't getting paid very well. You could assume that he wasn't making that much money off of his social media as well. He wasn't like a big social media influencer. So this guy was clearly speaking out of his passion for his people, a passion to make society better, a passion to expose the very people who are working against society. But then the very system that is meant to protect people I'm so angry. It's the same system that is going to attack people like Albert Ojwang. And this is just one case. I've read a few statistics here, but these are the reported cases. Can you imagine how many go underreported? Because most African countries, African leaders, they have some sort of shame when these statistics come out because it's clear that their presence in power is not supported by the people. So I think it's just embarrassing as a continent that we're still going through this. And I know you could argue that, oh yeah, other continents face this as well. But I don't think that is my concern. This channel is called Africa in Perspective, not the world in perspective, not Asia in perspective. I do not want to concern myself deeply with what is happening in other continents because the reason I started this channel is because not a lot of people are talking about Africa. So we're going to address these issues. And one of the ways that I suggest this to be done is, can we just come up with laws where people are allowed to speak what they want? Like, can we just make freedom of speech the norm? Because the idea that you, first of all, stopping people from speaking does not necessarily change what they think about you. That's number one. So every African leader who's trying to control other people's speech, you kidnapping somebody because they spoke up against you, even though it inflicts fear in other residents of your country or other international people as well, it doesn't really change what people think about you. It doesn't really change the fact that you're a terrible leader. It doesn't change the fact that you're dragging your country down into the worst economic state it has ever been in. It doesn't change the fact that your infrastructure is failing. It doesn't change the fact that there is still corruption in a lot of African countries. So can we just make freedom of speech just the bare minimum? That if somebody has an opinion, they have the right to speak it. If somebody wants to criticize the government, they should have the right to criticize the government because the money that African leaders are making is from the pockets of Africans. The money that these police officers are making, they're paid by the government. The government takes taxes from the people. So you are on the people's payroll. So and that also brings me well into the point that police officers need to be trained properly. Being a police officer, your job is to protect the people. It's not to fight the people. You're supposed to be fighting criminals. You're not supposed to be fighting people who are speaking on behalf of society. So I'm very deeply offended by this death. I'm very deeply hurt. And I know that again, like the girl in the TikTok video was saying, I did not know Albert Ojwang in person. I've been to Kenya, but I don't know much about the country as well. But I feel that because this is also affecting other African countries, this is something that needs to be spoken up about. And it's not enough for William Ruto, the president of Kenya, came out and said, oh, I condemn this. Raila Odinga, who's a key opposition leader in Kenya, also came out and said, this is horrifying. But speech, this just talk is cheap. What are we going to do about it? What are we doing about it? How are we stopping this from happening again? I want to hear concrete steps that you're going to take to be like, this should never happen again. And if it happens, it's an accident, not a trend that keeps reoccurring. So that's the video in its entirety. I'm really angry, but I hope this was a useful video just to get you thinking and get you involved in this conversation as well. If there's any topics on your mind that you want me to cover, just let me know and I'll go ahead and cover them in future episodes. I make videos from Mondays to Fridays, post them around 5 p.m., 6 p.m. GMT. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video and thank you so much for watching. Bye.